I would like to welcome everyone to this presentation called Configurable Reports as a Learning Analytics Tool, being presented by Elizabeth Dalton, who has been doing Moodle administration or sysadmin work for Granite State College for the last 2 years and working with Moodle for the last 3 years, and teaching online for a period of time that she chose not to disclose. So we're very happy to have you, Elizabeth, to share with us what you've learned about configurable reports and how to make that data come alive for the users. So thank you.
Great, thank you for the intro. So when we talk about learning analytics, I was asked the other day by my dissertation advisor, what's the difference between learning analytics and what we've all been doing with statistics anyway? And one of the key differences is that we're talking about live data. So we're talking about pulling data out of your live system, your live Moodle system or whatever else you're using for a number of purposes: to predict or to diagnose or to analyze, and for different beneficiaries, usually ultimately for your students and intermediately for your instructors and administrators, where administrators could be department heads, it could be somebody in academic affairs, it could be the instructional designers who are trying to help instructors get their courses online. A little bit about Granite State College. We are part of the University System of New Hampshire, and we are considered sort of the adult learning branch. So most of our students are, our median student age is 35 years old. 70% plus of our enrollments are completely online. So we do have degrees that can be completed completely online. We're a 4-year college with also some graduate programs, and we are a state-funded, lightly funded school. So open access is really one of our things to emphasize. And that means that we are an open admissions college. It's very easy for students to come, sign up for classes, and then struggle and maybe start to drift off and not succeed. And that's a real problem because students are receiving financial aid, usually in the form of loans, which means they could end up building up a lot of debt and not being successful, not getting what they need to get out of the time and energy that they're putting into taking our courses online or otherwise, but online is what we're worried about today. So what we started to do was implement various kinds of reports that could help instructors and administrators and lots of people throughout the learning process keep track of all of the students and what's going on in the courses. And the idea here is that if you're in a face-to-face class, there might be that student in the back corner of the room who just never says anything, never raises their hand, sometimes doesn't show up. And we can try as instructors in a face-to-face environment to keep an eye on all the students. We can try to make sure to include everybody. It's a little harder to do online, but in another way it's easier. And that's what I'm going to show you today. Some of the reports that I'll show you will actually make it easier to keep track of who's participating and who needs to be drawn out a bit more and encouraged to participate a bit more using some of the reports that we'll show here. I just want to say as we go forward that if you have a question or want me to stop at any time, you can type the question into the chat window or use the hand raising button in the panel on left-hand side, and I will try to stop and take questions at any time. Don't be shy. I'm perfectly fine with stopping my presentation. I don't want anybody to be confused. So let's just go on. Configurable Reports is a third-party block for Moodle, created by Juan Levia, and it's available right from the Moodle site. So I have here the link that you can copy if you want to go and pull it. It supports form-based reports, which are very easy to create, as well as SQL code, which is what I'm going to spend a little bit more time on today. One of the things that I really like about configurable reports is that it provides role-based permissions. So other kinds of reporting tools, either hand-coded reports or the ad hoc queries reporting system, which uses the same format reports as configurable reports. The ad hoc queries reporting system is only available to administrators or people who have a very generic reporting role assigned at the system level. Configurable reports allows us to make reports available to individual instructors within a course and to constrain the context of the information to those instructors just for the courses that they are instructors in. So I feel like this is a tool that gives us the ability to add to the reporting capabilities of Moodle in a way that opens it up for all of our different stakeholders, all the way down to the student level, to give them visibility about the data that Moodle collects. Another nice thing about both configurable reports and the ad hoc queries is that there are many online reports that can be used or adapted, and configurable reports also has a connection to a kind of archive where you can pull down various reports that are stored there, and that's a really handy feature as well. When you go into the configurable reports block, there's a manage reports link, and that takes you into a page that will show you all of the reports that you have in your system, whether they are site reports or course level reports, and then what kind of report they are. So the courses report type, for example, is a form-based report that's provided by the configurable reports block, whereas these other things are SQL reports that were hand-coded. And I'm going to show you more of the SQL reports, but I will briefly go over the courses report format as well. You can see who created it, and then you have some various editing tools, use of the usual sorts of icons, and then the formats that it's currently available to download the data in. When we add a new report, down at the bottom of that form, you can import a report from the repository as well. And this is where, as I said, the configurable reports block is connected to a global repository that contains a number of very useful reports already. You can also export and import reports and pass them around as XML files, so they can be imported here. Or you can just click Add Report, and that will take you on to the screen that lets you decide what kind of report you're going to create. Obviously, you need to give it a name. A summary is optional, but this will appear at the top of the report when it displays, and it's very helpful to include any instructions to the user at this point or any constraining definitions about how the report can be used. And then most of the reports that I work with are SQL type reports, but this is where you can choose some of the pre-formatted form-based reports, which I will show briefly. The form-based report options let you choose various columns, and this is an example that's a course report. So you can choose individual course fields, you add additional fields down here, and you can select them and then type in names for them and create reports. This is a very easy form-based kind of interface that lets you just quickly pull up information out of all of your courses or all of your users, and then you can constrain those by conditions, which are criteria. You can put in ordering. You can use runtime filters, so you can put in questions that the user will answer to constrain the report. You can reformat the results with templates. And then, as I said before, this is really important, you can constrain the permissions and open up the access to the reports to different groups of people, which is really helpful if you want to create reports that your instructors are going to use or other people who may not be site administrators. But as I said, the reports that I'm going to go over today are largely SQL coded reports. This is an example of some of the SQL coding, and if this all looks like gibberish to you, don't worry about it. It's not that hard to learn. It's just a little tricky. There's a little bit of a learning curve at the beginning, but once you get into it, you can start to create some very powerful reports that give you strong insights into what's going on among your population of learners and instructors and instructional designers and people who are trying to help the learners. At Graded State College, we use a couple of reports at a couple of different levels. So I'm going to start this presentation with our global in-course reports. And these are reports that use a couple of very special placeholder tokens within the SQL code that pull up the specific course ID that the report is running in and can also refer to specific users. I am making these available to our instructors and certain people I'm designating as course managers, and these are people in our college. They're in academic affairs. We don't have department heads per se, or we have very few of them. Most of our faculty are actually adjuncts. So we have people in academic affairs who are sort of overseeing that work in the development and the delivery. Eventually, I'd like to make some of these reports even available to students so they can see snapshots of their own activity. We started by just making up a numerical system to organize our reports. This helps make it easier to discuss reports with different people and direct them to the right report. So our local convention is reports in the 100 series contain individual or student information. The 200 series contains interactions between faculty and students, and the 300 series contains course design and details for an individual course level. As I'll show you, we also have site-wide reports that pull up course design and details, but at a broader level. So here's one of our most commonly used reports. This is the Student Weekly Participation Report. I've grayed out the names because I'm protecting the innocent and the guilty here, but the way this works is it runs inside a course. All of our faculty have access to these. They can just click on this. Now, they do need to use Configurable Reports block as an instructor. You need to have clicked on the edit mode. You have to turn edit mode on to be able to see the Configurable Reports block. That's something I'd actually like to see changed in the future. But you're a faculty member, you're in your course, you want to see how your students are doing, you click on the 110 Student Weekly Participation Report, and it pulls up for every one of your students how many edits they've made. Now we distinguish, and Moodle distinguishes, between views and edits, where a view is just a click. Somebody looks at something. An edit is where a student has made a change. So they have either posted to a discussion or a forum, or they've attempted a quiz, or they've submitted an assignment, or they've created a glossary item, anything that actually changes the course. Do I know if their post to the forum was substantive? No, I have no idea. But I know that they posted, they didn't just look. Our terms run 12 weeks, so I break things out by preterm because people get in on the weekend before the term officially starts. And then per week, week 1, week 2, week 3, and so forth, how many edits, how active has each student been in the course. In the summertime, our courses only run 8 weeks, and so these are all zeros at the end in a summer course, but here you can see this was a course that actually ran 12 weeks. For the convenience of the instructor, I provide a link to the student's academic advisor. This gets pulled out of the student's profile, and we have this as a configured profile field, and it's populated from our student information system. We use Banner. For convenience purposes, I've also assembled a URL link that pulls up the student's logs from in this course, or pulls up the course activity outline or the consolidated activity report. And this is because we found that instructors were having a really hard time finding these various reports buried in the reports menus. So by putting them here next to the information about the student, this provides a very easy way for instructors to quickly access this information. And we provide a little bit of information up at the top here. I have a question being posted. Do edits include forum post and assignment submission events? Yes, they do, exactly. Forum post, assignment submission, attempting a quiz, creating a database or glossary entry, things like that. But they don't include looking at a forum or looking at an assignment or anything of that sort. Now, we thought that it might be helpful for instructors to be able to see their own participation. So this is a report we're going to be rolling out this summer that will allow instructors to see on a weekly basis how much time they're spending in different activities. And eventually I want to make this report available to students as well, not so they can game the system, as it were, by faking things out and saying, oh, I guess I'd better post something in a forum, even if it's just hello, but just so they can see this. And I think it's important for all of the users on our system to realize and be aware of the level of tracking that the system can and does conduct on them. People should be aware of how data is being collected and used about them. And we don't want them to discover this in some other way. We want to just be open and upfront with them about the data that we collect. Sometimes a faculty member just wants to see something very quick about the student. This is a much faster report. The 110 takes a couple of minutes to pull up because it has to assemble all of the logs. This one just pulls up very quickly, gets the student, gets their email address from their profile, gets their academic coach, and again, this is a clickable link that contains an email address to send a note to the academic coach, that's the advisor, and tells us the student program, which is again something that we store in the profile as a custom field, and we're pulling that out of our student information system. Now at the next level up, we find that our faculty have trouble keeping track of all the students in the course sometimes, so we've assembled this report. And this is the student interactions report and combines interactions between faculty and students. So again, there's one line for each student, and they are grayed out here, and a summary that tells us, did the student participate this week? That is, did they contribute in one of these ways? And was the student contacted this week? So let me break that down a little bit. Did the student post to a forum? We do this in two pieces, in the last 7 days and in the course to date. The last 7 days is the most interesting because it gives us a sense of whether this student is still engaged with the course. Did the student post? Did the instructor reply to a post by this student? And have any other students replied to posts by this student? There's been a lot of discussion about the centrality of user participation, and people are making these really interesting graphs that show how much people are participating in discussions. I didn't have the capability to create that at this point, but I thought it would be really helpful to be able to see, is this student posting, and to what extent are they being responded to? If lots of people are already responding to this student, maybe this instructor doesn't need to respond to this student quite as much. We don't need to drown out the conversation. Then we also look at, has the student submitted an assignment within the last 7 days, and has the instructor graded any assignment, maybe the same assignment, maybe a different one, in the last 7 days, because that's another contact point that the students really appreciate. Has the student sent a message to the instructor? Has the instructor sent a message to the student within the past 7 days? If the student has done any of these things within the past 7 days, we say the student participated this week. If the instructor contacted the student by any of these methods in the past 7 days, we say the student was contacted this week. If the answer to any of these is no, probably the instructor should be taking some action. Now, if you did see zeros all the way across the board here, it might be good to know, has this student ever participated in this course? And that's why we have this block over here, which is just to date, all of the participation of the students in these ways to date in this course. This is a little bit clunky looking, but it does work, and our instructors find it very helpful. One of the limitations that we find about Moodle is that the role-based permission system sometimes hides information from people who might need to see it. So for example, people call into our phone tech support and they ask questions, and the phone tech support don't have the ability to tell if a course has been put in group mode, whether the gradebook has been made available, things of that sort. So we created a very simple report that I'm able to make available to tech support folks without giving them the ability to edit the settings of a course, which is the only screen that this information is visible on. So this is a way of using configurable reports to open up the visibility of some of the information without opening up your whole system or giving a role more permissions than it really ought to have. This is the information that we use when we are evaluating all of our pre-term courses. So this is, we use categories. We have a staging category, and then we have a production category, and then inside that we have undergraduate and graduate, and our School of Education is a separate thing, that sort of thing. And we pull up this information about each of the courses in our staging category, so within the course, we show this same level of information to the instructor, so they know what their course is being evaluated during the prep time. So the OL stands for online. Different courses have different types, and we have different expectations. Does this instructor's profile have a bio? Is there a description in the profile? Does their profile have a picture? Are all the required blocks visible in this course, or have they hidden some of them? And then we have some information about an optional instructor details block. We want everybody to use the collapsed topic format with the week's structure. That's something new that we're doing, so we report on whether or not they're doing that. And then we ask, how many weeks are defined in the course settings? The course settings is populated out of our student information system, so that should be accurate based on how many weeks this course is supposed to run for. And then we look and see, well, how many weeks in the course are named and visible? How many forums have been configured in the course? How many weeks include a forum? Note that this says 13. That's because it's 12 plus the area up at the top of the course, the 0 week, if you like. How many graded activities are there in the course, and how many weeks include a graded activity? We believe, and this is one of the things that I'm going to be checking statistically during my dissertation work this summer, we believe that providing regular feedback every week to every student is a key factor in encouraging student success and completion for credit of courses. So if we don't have an opportunity to grade something every week, we're worried that students are not getting enough feedback. We know that sometimes, for example, with a forum, people are using a manual grade item instead of having it in, like using ratings in the forum. So we also note if there are manual grade items, because that could mitigate if there's not enough activities over here. And then how many resources, these are ungraded, are within a course, and how many weeks include at least one resource. If any of these is 0, probably we should be looking at the course to see if there's a problem. And finally, we look for a file that is connected to the course with the text syllabus, and we say how recent it is and how many days ago it was updated. This is just a little easier for some people to read. Now, Nadav is suggesting try some gamification too, and we are looking at that and considering that. I am a big fan of both learning games proper and gamification, and so that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at in greater detail. Something that I'd like to do is start to offer badges to instructors who do a really good job preparing everything well in advance of the deadline. Also, I imagine Nadav is mentioning some gamification for students would be helpful, and we're looking at various ways to allow instructors to recognize when students are very successful at things that don't normally get graded. And that's kind of a broader topic that I'd like to get into during a different presentation. Sarah is asking, we have Moodle's 2.8.6, configurable reports block is visible when editing is off as well as on. If you are the administrator, the configurable reports block is always visible, if it's visible at all. If you are in as an instructor, you will find, as far as I know, at least in 2.6, but I believe even in 2.8, you'll find, you're in the course as a teacher. Okay, maybe this is fixed in 2.8. I will have to look and see. But even if you're in the course as a teacher, does your login also have admin role? Because if you also have any managerial role, you might still be able to see it. Okay, doesn't work in 2.7. Well, now we know. We are hoping to go to 2.8 this summer. Our summer term starts July 7th. We have a concern about grades changing. Probably all of you are aware of that. So we have had to postpone our upgrade to 2.8 until we're able to ensure that our archived courses will not suddenly have their grades change. That's another topic that I probably don't want to get into during this presentation because I could go on all day. So let me just go on to another report. This is something else that we offer to our instructors while they are preparing their courses. Again, so this is for staging purposes, that summarizes each of the units, topics, weeks, they're called sections in Moodle, that are in this course and are visible, and in each one, what its section name is, how many ungraded resources it has, how many fora, and how many graded activities. So this is just another quick way to say, oh, I don't have a resource in every week. Which one? Which section doesn't have resources? I'll go fix that right now. Nick Varney is asking, is it possible to report how many unique visitors a course receives daily? Nick, I use the Google Analytics plugin to do some of that, but I don't really worry so much about views overall. I understand what you're getting at with number of views of a course to see unique views. I haven't actually had a request for that report yet, but that's an interesting idea. It sounds like Nadav has actually done it or knows how to do it. I can think of how to do it, but I haven't done it yet. Richard Jones asked, do I anticipate rewriting my reports when the new Moodle database is upgraded? And yes, of course, I will have to do that. We are still on 2.6, so we haven't gone to the new logging system. I'm going to have to rewrite these reports, but I don't anticipate having a huge problem with that. I've been looking at it. And that's part of the reason that I haven't published these reports. I've published some of them on the Configurable Reports ad hoc queries page, but I'm going to publish more of them when I convert them over to the new format. Sarah says she didn't have to redo any of her reports. That is super. Sarah, were you doing any reports on logs? And Sarah says, yes, awesome. So maybe I won't have to do very much work at all. I'm going to have to take a look and see how well my reports migrate. And finally, we get a lot of questions about setting up the gradebook and categories and weights. And so we provided this report to our instructors as a quick check on the gradebook. Sarah reminds us we have to turn on legacy logs and site admin settings to be able to keep reusing the old reports. And yes, I've been doing that. Okay, so in the gradebook, we can have gradebook categories like weekly assignments. We have a category weight that I pull out here, and then the types of activities that have been included in this category, how many different activity types, because I suspect having more than one activity type may help encourage student engagement, but that's something I want to test statistically this summer. And then the names of the activities and a count of the activities. Tabitha, I can go into that at the end, or somebody else can answer it for you in the chat. It's a kind of a known issue. Maybe somebody could post the URL to the tracker. There's a tracker that really covers that in detail. Okay, so this 360 report is intended for our faculty to just be able to cross-check their syllabus against what they've actually done in the gradebook in Moodle. It's just another view to help people make sure that what they've done in Moodle is what they meant to do. So that's it for the course level reports. Then we also have site-wide reports, and these are again intended for course managers, instructional designers, people who are supporting faculty while they are preparing the courses in staging or while they are delivering the courses during the production period. And again, we distinguish between staging and production for different levels of reports and for different purposes of reports. So these are to support our quality initiatives. First, our local numbering conventions, and yours could be different if you do something like this. In our 400 series of reports, we use our preterm or staging QA, quality assurance, or readiness reports. Our 500 series reports tell us about the current term, the production term, and we're monitoring instructor activity and delivery. So not so much course preparation, but delivery. Our 600 series are about a specific course that we have for student orientation. We aren't doing anything in 700 yet. And then our 800 series are for various other kinds of resources and features so that we can see how much we're using various features in Moodle. Melanie asks, how many reports do I have? That people are allowed to access about 15. But not everybody has access to all of them. So this is the course review report. Remember, I showed you a report that summarized this information for one instructor just for their course. This is the course overview for all of the courses currently in the staging category. So this is, at a glance, our instructional design team can look at these and say, okay, who's really got these developing who's on top of their course development and who hasn't really started yet, or they've got a template in there but they haven't done anything with it yet. And our instructional designers and our academic affairs folks regularly download this to a spreadsheet and do manipulations on it and send notices out to faculty asking them to get in there and add things to their courses and that sort of thing. This was actually one of the first reports I developed. We have a number of times when we co-list courses, so we have a 600 level and a 700 level, and those are really going to be hosted in the same meta course. So for those courses, we have a special report that we use to check to make sure that all of the links have been set up the way they need to be, because we found it so cumbersome to make those links that we found that we needed to be able to set up a way to monitor them. We now use a special plugin that allows us to create meta course links in batch, and that has been very, very helpful. We try to keep all of our instructors in a given term in a cohort. So I prepared a report that lets us pull out all of the instructors who are currently assigned to teach in a given term, and then we upload that to update existing users and add them to a cohort. So we have the name of the cohort here based on the term that they're teaching in. This is just because we don't have the ability to run SQL queries directly. This gives us a quick way of being able to do this. So you can use Moodle, you can use the configurable reports to just automate things that you find yourself doing over and over again with the same group of people, or you want to try to create something, a category or a cohort based on some information. We've started requiring all of our face-to-face courses to make use of Moodle. So here we show all of the face-to-face courses in a coming term with a link to each of them, and we show whether it's visible or not, and then some section information, and then how the faculty are using that face-to-face course so far. And very often you'll find they're not using it very much. We're not requiring much at this point. We're only requiring that they post their syllabus there. But people are starting to get interested as they start to log into Moodle. Our faculty are starting to say, well, you know, I could make use of this. Oh, I could have people turn things in and use Turnitin or whatever. So we have some different kinds of ways that we expect to be using this report in the future. This is a report that I created most recently. This is one of my most recent reports that allows our syllabus administrator, this is somebody who gathers up our syllabi and archives them, to pull a list of all the courses in the upcoming term staging and provides a link to the file, the connected file, and then we can use something like Down Them All, which is a plugin for Firefox, and download all of the syllabi at once into a zip file so that we can archive them. So this is a way to make configurable reports, provide the ability to mass download a specific named file out of all of our courses at once. And the poor person whose job it is to archive syllabi just cried tears of joy when I put this together for him. All right, instructor online participation. We would like to think that all of our instructors are actively engaged in our courses constantly. It doesn't always work out that way. So what we did, this was another early report that I created, is for each of our courses, and again, the details of the course and the names are hidden. We show how many students are in the course, what the course start date was, because we have some that start in the middle of the term, whether the course is visible or not, which might indicate that the course was actually canceled or that it hasn't started yet. The total number of edits, which could include pre-course staging prep work. And then we isolate out the number of edits before the term. And again, an edit is posting to a forum, adding content to the course, grading an assignment, grading a quiz that needs to be manually graded, anything like that. And then in week 1, week 2, week 3, and so forth. And I took this snapshot in week 3 of a given term, so the rest of these are zeros. And then after term, there was a bug in the report when I took this. And then a click to the logs, a link that provides the logs for this particular faculty member in this course so that a manager can look and see, okay, when were they actually last logged in and what have they been doing? Maybe they've been logging in and looking around and they don't need to be doing anything because everybody's working on a project. It could happen. But this just gives a quick snapshot of the courses that we have currently in production as a way of helping our managers. We also have some site-wide resource reports. I talked about these a little bit earlier. We have some paid third-party services that we're using, and we want to know how much use we're getting out of them. So we use Blackboard Collaborate, ironically enough, as our collaboration webcasting kind of tool. We have Kaltura for streaming video. We have Turnitin for site plagiarism and citation checking. And we also use some LTI compliant services. We get requests for information about how we use quizzes and other things for accreditation and ranking surveys. And so I've been asked to create various reports specifically for that purpose. We have embedded SCORM objects that we create using tools like Articulate Storyline. We want to know how often we're doing that. And in the future, I anticipate writing reports to say, to what extent have we integrated social media in courses? Have people been making blocks with Twitter hashtag searches in them and things of that sort? So these are all different kinds of things that we tend to want to know about at a site-wide level. So here's an example. Here's our Blackboard Collaborate usage, and the administrator for Blackboard Collaborate, who used to be a different person but is now me, would be able to insert a start and end date, because that was the easiest way to do this particular one, and get a report back saying what courses, who created the session creator email, the session name, start and end dates, how many people attended, whether it was recorded, and whether the telephony was used. So this is just a way of knowing to what extent are we getting use out of this service that we are paying for. Kaltura is another service that we pay for, so we like to know how is it being used. So there are 3 different ways of incorporating a Kaltura resource, and we check to see how many of each of those kinds of resources are used across a particular time period. And this one, the 830, was developed specifically to respond to an accreditation request and has to do with our use of multiple choice based quizzes, which we tried not to use too many of. So here we're looking at some specific examples of how many quizzes are included in courses, how many questions were included in all of the quizzes, summed up, how many of those were multiple choice versus short answer versus other like essay. So what percentage of them were multiple choice, whether the questions are randomized from a bank, whether the answers are randomized as far as the order that they get picked in, and then some information about how long ago the quiz was updated, and the minimum and maximum mean in this course if there are 10 quizzes, the minimum quiz age and the maximum quiz age. And obviously I've got some kind of an error here because I've got some negative values, so I'll have to check and see what that's about. But this is helpful for us to know that we've got some quizzes in here that are 800 days old. Well, I suppose if they were pulling from a randomized question bank, they might still be okay, but I think probably these need to be revisited and rewritten, even assuming that we want to use them at all. So this is, again, an administrative tool that we can try to use to keep the content of our courses fresh. We were asked if there was a good way to find out how many files were attached to courses and how much space we were using. And so we created this report. And this just tells us how many images, other media, other files are attached to the course and the total file size being used by each course. And we can sort this by, we have our different terms in categories of their own. So we pick a category and see if it's really huge, see if maybe we want to start deleting old files to make room on the server, that sort of thing. And Turnitin assignment usage. Now that we're using Turnitin, we have started to say, well, okay, where is it being used? How many Turnitin assignments are being used, and who are the instructors who are using it? Melanie notes, I put reports in specific courses that instructor specifically asked for, reports in but not all. That would make more sense with editing on. You'd see the option to add it. I'm not sure. Is that a question for me? Maybe it's just a comment. We try to provide some baseline reports for all instructors because we want them to use them. We want them to use them as part of their process of teaching. We have a new kind of course that we're doing called resource courses, and these are courses that contain common resources that are going to be used by multiple sections of an actual course. So here we have a course called CRIT 502, and this resource course is called CRIT 502 Books and Resources, and it is connected to all of these different instances of this course. And then we say how many students are coming in from each of those instances. And this is, again, just for us to cross-check and make sure that we're seeing everything connected to the course the way we need. I guess some people have this issue and some people don't. So with the My Reports, the configurable reports block being visible or not, it's possible that it's a theme interaction. We're hosting with Remote Learner and we're using the RL master theme. So it's possible that our theme is obscuring something in some contexts and not in others. That's something that I can check into and find out if it happens. And finally, we've started to create some SCORM content using Articulate Storyline and some other tools. And I wanted to have a sense of where those were being used and how often they were being used. So we have a report for that. Marie-France points out maybe it's a security issue on the role. I thought so too, and I've been looking. I have not been able to figure out what permission on a role might be keeping instructors from seeing the configurable reports block in their courses, but it could be something like that. I have customized the roles fairly heavily. And then the last thing is we are starting to make increasing use of the external tool or LTI interface, and we wanted to be able to say, well, where are faculty using that and what are they connecting to? So in particular, we're seeing a lot of an ePortfolio. We have a lot of people using Chalk and Wire in our graduate courses. It's required. So we wanted to make sure that that was being used. And I anticipate enhancing this report so that it has more detail about what kinds of resources are being used. Okay, phpMyAdmin is your friend while you're trying to develop these sorts of reports. If you're hosting with Remote Learner, you get this for free automatically. You may not even realize that you have it. If you are hosting yourself, if you have installed a typical LAMP stack, you may have this already. If you're hosting with somebody else, you may get them to install it for you. It's very convenient, lets you look at all the individual tables, lets you explore and experiment with SQL and develop quick kinds of things, or you can do a search and it will show you what the SQL code looks like that generates the results of that search. So I use this sort of thing all the time just to see what kind of SQL code do I want to use to make something happen. So I start from here and then go on and develop more interesting SQL after that. We have some more chatter in the sidebar about the block configurable reports, view reports capability. I think I have them view own reports only, so that's probably where my problem is. I'm really happy that somebody has brought that up. I'll have to see if I can fix it now for my instructors. Yay! Marie-France says, I know where my tables are, but I can't seem to get another report from phpMyAdmin. You should have available to you some different tabs up here, including search and including the SQL. And in the SQL, you can hand write out your SQL. In search, you'll get a form that will let you fill in values against the particular table fields and will return both the SQL that it used to search and the results. So you might be able to experiment with that a little bit. I'm taking general questions at this point, so please feel free to jump in, anybody. Richard asks, is there a good source of information on the content structures of Moodle tables yet, or did you have to work by inspection? I had to work by inspection. There is some information available. There are some schema that you can download, and I have found, I've installed MySQL Workbench, and I've been looking at the schema, but the schema aren't connected well enough to be able to just get information out of that. Nadav asked, do you know you can link reports? I think what is being asked here is if you create a report, for example, going back earlier when we looked at the form-based reports, when you create a form-based report, you can have it refer to another form-based report. So if you create a user report, you can then list the user details. Okay, so here, if you create a user type report, you can then create a course report and pull in details from the user type report. So that's one of the things that you can do with the form-based reports. It's very cool, but I have found that it doesn't have the level of granularity and complexity that I usually use. Okay, so Nadav says no on the SQL reports. Yes, I do a lot of joins to pull together different tables and get the particular information that I want to show up in my SQL reports. Nadav says not using the latest CR block. That's probably true. I'm still on 2.6, so I probably need to update. Sarah points out many ad hoc reports have been contributed for people to use as is or starting points. That certainly is. Am I going to share my reports? Yes, I will. I just want to test them with the new newest version of configurable reports and with the new logging format to make sure that they all work, and then I'll be posting these out for other people to use. I also want to do a little bit of cleanup. I usually do have some comments. Like you can see here, I show this is where I'm pulling in the student academic coach. I want to put in some more comments for places where there's code in here that's specific to our instance of Moodle, like the particular names that we've given to these optional profile data fields, and provide a little bit more documentation on how to customize these for people's different situations. Nadav, I know who you are. I just realized who you are. So yeah, now there are these really great tags. Exploits of a mom. What are you telling me about here? Oh, yes. Very, very cute. So configurable reports is still in development, is constantly getting new features. I love it to death. It gives me the ability to really make Moodle what we need it to be for our faculty to be able to have access to data that lets them know what their students are up to. Melanie says, I have one report that runs lists on all users for a particular location and has a link to another report that runs data for all users on the site, but finds it down to each individual. Okay, I haven't got reports linked together quite that way yet. Oh, are you constructing links that then go to link other reports the way I have links in that go to specific pages like these, but you have a link that kicks off another report? Is that what you're doing? Oh, what a cool idea. Yeah, I'll have to do that too. Yes, I know how to do that because I construct links all the time. I just didn't think of doing that to have it kick off another configurable report. Yeah, that's a good idea. I will get the updated version. We host with Remote Learner. They have to vet all of our updates. Filters work, they just don't work especially well. Yes, I have had issues with that. One of the issues is that a filter can only be used once. You can't use the same filter value in multiple different parts of your SQL query. So I ran into that problem where I had a filter with a value like this, and I tried to have it used in a couple of different join places or at a couple of different where statements, and it would only take effect, it would only substitute in one place. So I wasn't able to do that. I had missed a question earlier. Oh, Nadav was asking if I'm using graphs. I have a few, but I don't find them especially helpful at this point. I need a little bit more control to be able to do them. Nadav also says, another cool feature, we made a reports plugin that display all the reports in the user's administration menu. Oh, that's cool. Although the reports section of the user's administration menu is so buried right now that, again, I had to pull things out of the reports menu in the user's administration block and get them out here to make them more visible. Oh, Melanie reminds us that if you use the filter tab and you're using a SQL report, you have to add some SQL in the where clause of the actual report, and people do tend to trip over that a little bit. You need to have something in the where clause first. So you need to have some value, even if it's just 1 equals 1, and then you can add the filter string because it assumes it automatically puts an and in there. So you have to have something for it to and to. I think it's really cool that Nadav is here. Thank you for coming today. What other questions? Any thoughts about reports that you're using locally, or that, you know, things that you think would enhance the reports that I've shown, or what you think configurable reports are, what you think learning analytics ought to be used for? Should I get into the ethical dangers of using learning analytics? One of the things that worries me is that we'll have somebody tempted to start grading by the numbers. I do not want somebody to take a report like this and say, well, I've got people who are logging in and posting 7 times a week, and this person didn't post at all this week. I'm going to give them a 0. That's not good learning. That's not good teaching practice. And yes, Richard points out evaluating teachers by the numbers. And I don't want to see us doing that either. What I tell people regularly when I show these reports, when whether it's the reports for teachers about learners or the reports about teachers for our admins, is these can tell you about red flags. These reports can direct your attention to a situation that may need your attention. They don't tell you the whole story. And that's why we make a point of having links to more complete reports that give you more information about what's going on with the individual. So we really try to emphasize these are not to be used directly for grading. Sarah, thanks for stopping in, and I look forward to seeing your comments in the forum. Yeah, Richard points out the next step could be paying teachers by the numbers. We don't want to see that either. One of the things that I'd like to do later in my research agenda, which stretches out for the rest of the century, I would like to start doing things like discourse analysis on the forum posts so that I could start to say, okay, well, these posts seem to be more substantive or seem to be more related to the topics that have been suggested or requested by the instructor. But even that, we have humans involved in teaching for good reason. We don't want to just reduce down to numbers. Nick points out, I'm into the idea of analytics to drive up course design standards. The number of labels used, the ratio of activities to resources in courses. Yes, this is the kind of thing that I want us to pay attention to. And that's why we do provide this sort of information at the individual level to the instructor and multiplied out for all of the courses in staging, just to start to get people thinking about Do you have something that's going to give feedback to your learners every week? Do you have some kinds of resources that you're going to provide to your students every week? One of the plugins that I'm looking at is the custom label plugin, which would allow us to say not just how many labels do you have, but do you have a label that says what the readings are for the week? I want to be able to also say you have the ability to add in or remove one kind of label but not another. So if we have signpost sort of design labels, we want those in there and not able to be removed or hidden by the instructors, so that the instructors will fill in between them. So the custom label plugin looks very promising, but not quite ready for prime time yet. Richard points out that with reports like these, there's a problem that people start to game the system, students and teachers, both. And that's one of the reasons that it's really important not to try to use these as an evaluation tool. If you have evaluation and advantages being driven by numbers, people will fake the numbers. You can't use them that way. Any system that encourages people to cheat, that gives people an advantage to cheating, will start encouraging cheating. But Juan has already responded to the tracker. So I will post to him later. He is so cool. He's always been extraordinarily responsive. This is, I think, one of the best maintained plugins in Moodle. I would really personally like to see it be part of core, but since my hosting provider isn't giving me any trouble with having it on my server, I haven't really fought for that. One thing I would really like to see is the ability to automatically have these reports run and archive the way the custom SQL plugin does. So the custom SQL plugin, you can have it automatically run and store the result once a week. And that would give us these snapshots that we could go back and look at and say, over time, how much development has been happening on this course. That hasn't happened yet. Marie-France says she wishes it would be translated into French. Of course, that is something that can be done with the strings code. So I could offer to help. My French is medium. Oh, I'll get my daughter to do it. She's taking lots of French courses. Nadav says it's been partially done. Well, you know, crowdsourcing is a wonderful thing. Let's see if we can get that done for you. Richard Jones says the fields tables won't be able to be translated. The names of the fields in the tables wouldn't be translated, but the way they display in Moodle is completely configured by using the as part of the SQL code. So you can have them appear in your report any way you like. And that's just, so here I have academic coach, for example. So the final report would be able to display in French, even though you'd have to, you know, use uc.data or whatever. Sounds like we're coming up on the hour.
Indeed, we are. I want to thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. I'm always excited when I see people learning how to take advantage of the data that's within Moodle to help inform what's happening in the classroom. I think this is something that we're going to continue to see pushed in Moodle, and because I think the need is so tremendous. So your help in kind of highlighting some of the areas that you found helpful has been really important. So thank you very much for doing that. And
again, yes. I'd just like to emphasize that I'm going to be putting some of these reports to the test this summer by trying to find out the extent to which these values that we pull up in these reports actually do predict student success and completion of credit courses.
Excellent.
And I think that's what we need to do to drive analytics, to make sure that what we're counting is worth counting.
Exactly. Exactly. So I'm going to, at this point, stop the recording and Again, Elizabeth, thanks for a great job on your presentation, and continue. I'd just like to encourage everyone to continue to share their experiences with each other, and if they come up with cool reports, to add those into the documentation so that others can use those as well.
And thanks to everybody who logged in. We had great participation. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, wonderful.